It was saved by a billionaire CEO surgeon at a nightclub. It was saved by a millionaire. $50,000 0 cents for one drink with me. The man's voice was cold, deadly. She was cornered, desperate, trapped. Then suddenly, "She's not your girlfriend," another girl cut through the music. All heads turned. A powerful figure stepped from the shadows, adjusting his cufflinks. "Uncle Thomas," the young man stammered. "Your son just attempted rape," the stranger barked into his phone. "Handle it, or I will." He was Dr. Thomas Winstead, beleaguered surgeon with no patience for cruelty. The woman he'd just saved? He was about to change his life, and he was about to rewrite hers. With $200,000, 0 cents, and one condition: never sell your body again. But what happens when the girl he saved becomes the only one who can save him? The night that changed. It was a Friday night carved out of neon and regret. The nightclub pulsed like a living beast, bodies moving, music shaking the air, lights cutting through the smoke like jagged memories. Somewhere in the crowd, Emily Taylor, 25, kept her head down and her hope lower. She wasn't here to dance. She wasn't here to drink. She was here to make $5,000 0 cents before morning, or her father would lose his spot at the hospital. She didn't belong here. Not in the too-tight black dress that wasn't hers, not in the heels that blistered her toes. She'd once dreamed of becoming an architect, designing buildings that touched the sky. But tonight she was just a girl with no time, no choices, and a father on a ventilator. She hadn't eaten since yesterday. Her phone was filled with missed calls from billing departments and one final text from the black market clinic. "We can give you $100. 0 cents gay, no ID, no questions. Just come tonight." He was about to reply when a man's voice snapped her back to reality. $50,000 0 cents. One drink. The offer came from a tall, entitled frat boy in an expensive blazer, one hand on her wrist, the other already motioning to the VIP lounge. His breath smelled of bourbon and bad decisions. "Let me go," she said, trying to pull free. "I like girls who pretend to be classy." He grinned, tightening his grip. "But we both know why you're really here." Then he was gone, or rather yanked back, so hard he nearly fell. The club fell into a hush as a second man appeared, clean cut, dark suit, eyes like storms over water. He moved with an authority that silenced everything around him. One flick of his wrist and 2 security guards materialized behind him. "Uncle Thomas, it's just a misunderstanding," the young man stammered. "Your son just attempted rape," the stranger said coldly into his phone. "Handle it before I involve the police." He turned to Emily. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "Come with me," he said. He hesitated. She had no reason to trust him, and every reason to run. "Please," he added, this time softer, "let me help you." His name was Dr. A legend in Manhattan's medical circles. Cold, brilliant, widowed young. He'd lost his wife during a routine surgery. Since then, he'd built a medical empire and a stone wall around his heart. People feared him. Investors respected him. No one loved him. No one dared to. He didn't save women in nightclubs. He didn't even go to nightclubs. But something about Emily, those haunted eyes, the way her hands trembled but her voice did, unlocked something buried in. He took her to his car. Quiet, luxurious, private. She sat on the edge of the leather seat like she didn't deserve to touch it. "Why were you in that place?" he asked, watching her through the rearview mirror. She hesitated, then answered truthfully. "I was trying to sell my eggs," she whispered. "I need the money. My father's dying." There was no shame in her voice, just despair. Thomas gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. "The black market fertility trade is one step above trafficking," he said. "Do you know how many girls don't come back from that?" He looked away. "I thought I could handle it." He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he pulled out a checkbook and wrote $200,000 0 cents. "Take this. It's a loan if you need it to be. A gift if you'll accept it. But I never want to hear that you were in a place like that again." "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "You don't even know me." "Because I've seen what happens to girls like you," he replied. "And I didn't stop it in time. Not once. Never again." He gave her the check. He left just like that. The next morning, Emily stood outside her father's ICU room, the check crumpled in her pocket like it might disappear. She didn't sleep, couldn't eat. The world moved, but she didn't feel part of it. The nurse pulled her aside. "Be stable for..." The payment went through. "We'll begin the new treatment today." Emily swallowed her tears. He had no way to repay him. Not really. But she would. That night, she didn't go back to the club. She went to an interview, her final shot, a junior architect position at Adams Construction, one of the fastest-growing firms in the city. She got the job. And by sheer cruel fate, that's when things started to spiral all over again. Because her new boss, Sam Adams, Rick, young, charismatic, and dangerous in all the ways Thomas Winston wasn't. Sam took an immediate interest in her. Too much. He praised her work, scheduled meetings late at night, invited her to exclusive events. When she hesitated, he leaned in. "Don't be ungrateful, Emily," he said. "People like you don't get second chances." She didn't know who to trust. Sam was her employer, her chance at starting over. But Thomas was the one man who didn't want anything from her. And maybe the only one who could save her again. But saving someone isn't always enough. Because Emily had secrets of her own. She stepped into Tony's life. He stepped into the crosshairs of a conspiracy much darker than she realized. Someone hurt her silence. Someone wanted her out of the way. The man who saved her from a nightclub might be the only man powerful enough to stop what's coming. If he's willing to risk his heart again. Section 1. First encounter and initial bond. A girl with no choices, a man with no heart. The city was loud that night. Emily Taylor gripped the edge of the nightclub bar like it might anchor her to the earth. Sweat trickled down the back of her neck. Her fingers shook, but not from alcohol. She hadn't eaten in over 24 hours. She'd sold her winter coat last week. All she had left was her dignity. And even that was cracking under the weight of hospital bills. Her father was dying. His heartbeat kept alive by machines and prayers she no longer believed in. "I just need one night," she whispered to herself. "Just enough to get him through the week." And then came the voice that changed everything. $50,000, 0 cents. One drink with me. She turned, startled. A young man, maybe 30, oozing Wall Street arrogance, stood too close. His eyes raked over her like she was merchandise. His grin was practiced, entitled. He was used to buying what he wanted. "Let me go," she said, trying to twist away. "Come on," he laughed, tightening his grip on her wrist. "We both know what this is." A small crowd turned their heads, intrigued but silent. No one. A voice cut through the chaos. Calm, cold. The young man turned, annoyed, until he saw him. Got Thomas Winston, standing under a flickering strobe light, like he didn't belong in this world. Because he didn't. Black suit, collar crisp, expression stone. The club's pounding music seemed to dim as he walked forward, each step deliberate. "Uncle Thomas," the young man stammered, going pale. It's not what it looks like." He took out his phone. "Sister," he said, "your son just attempted rape in a nightclub. Handle it before I do." Silence. Gasps. The boy backed away. Security arrived. In minutes, the predator was gone. Emily stood frozen, her breath catching in her throat. The adrenaline hit her all at once. "Are you hurt?" Thomas asked. She shook her head. "I'm fine." "You're not fine, let me take you home." She narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "Why would you do that?" "Because you remind me of someone," he said simply. That was all. A ride that wasn't supposed to matter. The car was too quiet, too clean. She didn't know where to put her hands. Yamu sat on the opposite side, his face unreadable. He didn't look at her like the others did. He didn't flirt. He didn't touch. He just observed. "Why were you there?" he finally asked. She exhaled. "Trying to earn quick money. I was going to sell my eggs. Black market. I know it's reckless, but it's dangerous," he interrupted, "and illegal." She laughed, bitter. "So is letting your father die because the hospital demands $8,400. 0 cents up front." That quieted him. "What's his condition?" "Stage 4 renal failure. He's been in and out of ICU for months. Medicaid denied another extension. They told me I had 2 days before they pull life support." Yamush nodded slowly. "You'd risk your life to save his." He looked away. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a checkbook. "What are you doing?" she asked, panic rising. "Solving a problem," he said, scribbling a figure. He tore the check and handed it to her. $200,000, 0 cents. "You don't know me," she whispered, staring at it. "I could be lying." "You're not," he replied. "I know liars. You're not one of them." Her hands trembled. "Not prostitute." I didn't ask for anything in return." "Then why hop?" His eyes darkened. "Because I didn't help her." Emily blinked. "Who?" He opened the door. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, you'll figure out how to use it." "One way." The truck. Her father's treatment resumed. The nurses began smiling again. Emily started breathing again. He bought groceries, real ones, paid the rent, took a shower without rationing the hot water. But her mind kept circling back to the man who'd saved her, and disappeared. No phone number, no message, nothing. Until one day, walking past the surgical wing of St. Luke's Hospital, she saw him, in scrubs, hands in his pockets, arguing with 2 senior board members. Confident, distant, like a storm behind glass. "Win," said she said before she could stop herself. He turned, startled. Then, recognition. "Miss Taylor," he said. "Who's that?" "I just wanted to say thank," she stammered. "I used the money for my father. He's stable. I've started working again. I'm trying." He nodded. "I could never repay you," she whispered. "Then don't," he said. "Just don't lose yourself." A silence. "You saved me," she added. "No," he replied, turning to leave. "I just gave you time." A seed was planted. That should have been the end. But fate doesn't like clean endings. 1 week later, Thomas received a call. "She's applying for a position at Adams Construction," the voice said. "Sam Adams's company." Thomas's jaw clenched. "Don't let her take that job," he said. "I've seen what Sam does to women like her." "Should I intercept?" "No," he growled. "Just watch her. Report everything." The line went dead. And Thomas stood alone in his office, his hand still holding the phone, and his heart for the first time in years refusing to stay cold, because he didn't know it yet. But Emily Taylor wasn't just the girl he saved that night. He was going to be the woman who'd teach him how to feel again, even if it meant breaking everything he'd spent a lifetime building. Section 2. Help and Hesitation. The interview that should have changed her life. The glass doors of Adams Emily stood outside, clutching the worn strap of her thrifted handbag, dressed in her only good blouse, the one she ironed 3 times just to feel ready. This wasn't just a job interview. It was her way forward, her proof that she could build something for herself, not out of fear, but from strength. Inside, the lobby was sharp and cold, steel and concrete, ambition in every corner. "Miss Taylor," the receptionist called. Emily rose, smoothing her skirt. Her stomach was a knot of doubt and caffeine. "Mr. Adams will see you now." He expected a formal pang. What she got instead was Sam Adams, leaning against the edge of his massive desk like he owned the world. "Emily," he said, standing with a smile too white, too perfect. Something about him made his skin tighten. "You've reviewed my portfolio?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "Impressive work," he replied, though he hadn't even opened her folder. "But I'm more interested in who you are." She hesitated. I determined. He walked around her slowly as if circling prey. "And Scotty." Her jaw clenched. He smiled wider. "You're hired," he said, "junior designer. You start Monday." Emily blinked. "But it..." And just like that, she was walking out with a job. But something felt wrong. She felt like the interview had been a test. The surgeon reappears. Later that night, Emily sat on her apartment floor surrounded by architectural textbooks, her knees pulled to her chest, her hair in a messy bun, and fear curling in her ribs. She should have been thrilled. But all she could think about was the way Sam's eyes followed her, not like a mentor, but like a man already planning how far he could pull the strings. She picked up her phone, scrolled to the contact label. Thomas Winston, only recently saved from the check he'd written. He typed, "Do you know Sam Adams?" He deleted it. He typed again, "Is he safe?" He deleted it again. What would he think? That she was weak? Dependent? Her phone buzzed first. "Thomas Winston, don't take the job." Her hands went cold. He stared at the message. "Too late," she whispered. Unannounced. Thomas's office was all shadows and silence when she showed up. His assistant tried to stop her. Someone Tommy saw Emily outside the glass doors, standing like a question he hadn't prepared for. He waved her in. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know I shouldn't be here, but..." "You took the job," he interrupted, not unkindly. "I need it." He looked away. "I don't trust anyone," she replied, "not even myself." A long pause. "Sam's not a mentor. He's a manipulator. He likes control. Pretty girls with complicated pasts, he sees them as projects." "I can handle myself." Thomas stood. "You shouldn't have to..." She was silent. "You didn't call me for help," he added. "No," she said quietly, "but I'm here now." The dinner that wasn't a date. He didn't plan to invite her, but the words came out anyway. "There's a fundraiser tomorrow night," he said. "Come with me." Emily frowned. "As what?" "Is someone I trust?" She tilted her head. "That's not the same as someone you like." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. That night he picked her up outside her apartment. She wore a dress she'd borrowed from a friend. Simple, navy blue, too thin for November. He handed her a coat from the back seat. Cashmere. New. He hesitated. "Wear it," he said softly. "I'm not trying to own you." "Then why are you helping me again?" He looked at her, long, quiet. "Because I know what it's like to feel alone in a room full of people." The fundraiser. The ballroom sparkled with wealth. Diamond earrings, champagne fountains, men who forgot what it meant to earn their last dollar. Emily stayed close to Thomas, her eyes scanning exits instinctively. His presence was commanding, but she noticed how people whispered when he passed, how they didn't approach, how they feared him, until she arrived. Katrina Sawyer. Billionaire, board chair, widow, and once, rumor had it. He greeted him with a slow smile. "Dr. Winston." "But Katrina," he said, stiff. Her eyes slid to Emily. "New assistant?" she asked with venom wrapped in silk. "Architect," Emily corrected. "I work at Adams Construction." Katrina's smile vanished. "Pity," she said before walking off. Emily turned to Thomas. "She hates me. She hates me more." He didn't answer, but she saw it, the pain behind his eyes. The rooftop. They left early. The city air was cold and clean on the rooftop terrace. Emily leaned on the railing, her hair dancing in the wind. "What do you save people?" she asked. "You act like you don't care, but you do. Caring is dangerous." So living like nothing mattered. He looked at her then, and something in his chest cracked. "My wife," he said slowly, "she died during a surgery, a mistake. Mine." Emily froze. "I haven't let anyone in since." A long silence passed between them. Then she reached for his hand, just a touch. They're soft. "You don't have to let me in," she said. But maybe, don't push my ouch either. Section 3, Hope and First Obstacle. Building something of her own. Monday morning, Emily stood in front of Adams Construction for the second time. Only now she had a badge clipped to her coat, her name printed in firm black letters. Emily Taylor, Junior Architectural Designer. It felt surreal. Just 3 weeks ago she'd been washing her hair in a sink and counting coins for bus fare. Now she stood in a lobby of polished glass and steel, surrounded by people in blazers who never had to explain where they came from. "You belong here," she whispered to her reflection in the elevator. And for the first time in a long time, she almost believed it. Sam Adams smiling in shadows. Sam Adams greeted her with a warmth that felt performative. He was too charming, too casual. "Emily," he said, "you made it. I was afraid you'd vanish on me." He smiled politely. "I keep my promises." "Good," he said, his eyes trailing her as she passed. "We need people who know how to stay loyal." Her stomach nodded. Something about the way he said loyal didn't sound like a compliment. It sounded like a warning. He led her to a quiet conference room and handed her a stack of blueprints. "This is the Riverside Innovation Center. Your project. You'll be shadowing me." Her eyes widened. "That's your flagship project?" "A reward," but he said. "Don't let me down." Emily bit her tongue. This wasn't a gift. It was the first spark of purpose. Days passed in a blur of measurements, renderings, and revisions. Emily buried herself in work. She stayed late, skipped meals, and found herself sketching floor plans in the margins of grocery lists. And slowly, something bloomed. No, he wasn't just surviving anymore. But she was contributing. One evening she stood alone in the drafting room, backlit by city lights. She traced the lines of a suspended walkway across a model she'd built, her fingertips light as breath. "It's beautiful," came a voice from behind her. Mia Lupatonsky turned. It was Tom, the surprise visit. "What are you doing here?" she asked, trying not to smile. "I had a meeting on the 52nd floor," he said. "Saw your name in the system. Thought I'd check on you." He folded her arms. "Spying on me?" "Monitoring your safety." He stepped closer. "I'm not your patient, Dr. Winston." "No," he said softly. "But you matter." The words landed hard. She looked away. "I'm doing fine," she said. "Actually, I think I'm doing more than fine." Utama studied her. And Sam. Distant, cold, but professional. He gave a faint nod, but his jaw was tight. "If he ever—" "I know," she said. "You'll burn down the building." He didn't deny it. The setup. The next morning, Emily received an email. Subject: urgent meeting with Bullet Bold. No room number, no attachments. Just the company letterhead. He checked with reception. "Boardroom C," they said. "Top floor." He entered the glass chamber at 9:55 a.m. Inside were 4 men in suits she didn't recognize. They weren't board members. They weren't architects. They were investors. "Miss Taylor," one of them said. "You're late." "I didn't realize this was a pitch meeting," she said, flustered. "I wasn't told." They exchanged glances. "Mr. Adams said you were the project lead, that you'd be presenting the new proposal." Emily froze. Her heart thudded in her ears. "What is this?" "Let's proceed," one of them snapped. He tried, fumbled her way through concepts she hadn't been briefed on. Her voice shook. Her renderings were out of sync with the latest specs. The investors looked unimpressed. By the end, they were already checking their watches. When she left the room, her hands trembled. Her blouse was damp with sweat. The first blow. Sam found her in the hallway. Smiling. "It could have gone better," he said casually. "You set me up," she whispered. "Or maybe I just gave you a shot," he replied. "You're either ready or you're not." He wasn't told it was a pitch. I wasn't given the materials. "Are you blaming me for your lack of preparation?" Her cheeks burned. He leaned closer. "Learn to swim, Emily. No one's going to throw you a life jacket every time." He walked away, his footsteps echoing in the marble hall. He stood there for a long time, but she ran. The rooftop return. The sky was turning to ash when she found herself back on the hospital rooftop, the one Thomas had taken her 2 weeks ago. He sat down on the same bench, pulling his coat tight against the wind. She didn't cry. He wasn't hurting him, but because she was too used to it. You weren't supposed to be here alone. You defined me. You're predictable when you're broken. That wasn't an insult. It was an understanding. He looked away. He humiliated me. He nodded. He told me to present to the board, gave me nothing, made me look like a fraud. Thomas's eyes darkened. Then I'll deal with him. Don't, she said quickly. That's what he wants, to prove I'm just a girl who needs saving. In scandal, he sat beside her. And for a moment there was only silence. I thought I was finally standing on my own, she whispered, but I'm still drowning. Even strong swimmers need someone to throw a rope. She turned to him, her voice small. Why do you keep showing up? Because I never showed up in time for her, he said. She didn't ask who he meant. He just took his hand. Section 4. Minor misunderstanding and emotional doubt. The quiet before it breaks. For the first time in weeks, Emily slept through the night. The next morning, sunlight spilled through her tiny apartment's windows, and for a few fleeting moments the world didn't feel like it was hunting her. She poured coffee, watered the lone plant she had kept alive since college, and smiled when her phone lit up. Thomas Winston, lunch, my office. New, bring your latest sketches. He stared at the message. It was casual, efficient, cold. Yet, her heart fluttered, something missing in his eyes. Thomas's office was carved from glass, and power. Emily arrived 5 minutes early. She wore navy slacks and a white blouse. Simple, professional, quietly elegant. He greeted her with a nod, not rising from his desk. You look well, he said. You look like someone who hasn't slept, she replied. He smirked faintly. He handed him the sketches Madala, her housing prototypes for inner-city expansion. His eyes scanned the pages. You're better than you think, he murmured. And you're harder to read than anyone I've ever met, she replied. He looked up at that. Something flickered in his gaze. Regret? But then I have 15 minutes before my next consult, he said. Let's eat. A lunch that wasn't about food. They sat in the hospital's rooftop garden, where nurses rarely went and administrators forgot existed. He set down the boxed lunch. Steak salad, green juice, everything healthy, nothing joyful. You always eat like this, she asked, poking her fork at a too raw cherry tomato. Hobby, he said. Or punishment. She bit into her sandwich. You didn't bring me here for lunch. I brought you because I trust you, he said, and I want your perspective on something. He opened a file. Medical ethics lawsuit. Whistleblower. Potential scandal. You're asking me for advice, she said. You're outside the system. That makes you rare. She wanted to be flattered. But instead she felt used. You always hand out trust like a transaction. He looked up sharply. What do you... I mean, she said, setting her fork down, sometimes I think I'm just another case file to you. Another woman who needs fixing. His jaw flexed. You think I'm trying to fix you? Aren't you? Silence, and something broke between them, not loudly, but like threads snapping between fingers. The storm she didn't expect. That night, Emily was called into Sam's office, alone. The door closed behind her like a verdict. I saw you leaving Dr. Winston's car, Sam said, sipping bourbon by the window. He tensed. You're spending time with him, taking meetings at his office. Does that mean you're representing his interests now? Representing myself? She said. He walked over to her scrum. Careful, Emily. Men like Thomas Winston don't give without expecting something back. Her hands curled into fists. You're wrong about him. Am I? He whispered. You think you're special to him. He stepped back. What exactly are you accusing me of? Nothing, he said smoothly, but the board will wonder who you're loyal to when this upcoming merger becomes public knowledge. He blinked. What merger? Never mind, he smiled. Forget I said anything. But she couldn't. The photograph. Emily returned to her desk, heart pounding, confused, angry. He opened his work email. A message from a blocked sender. No text. Just a photo. Thomas and Katrina Sawyer, standing close outside a private charity gala, smiling. Katrina's hand on his chest. You're yet to the knock. Emily stared at it. Cold. Betrayed. He opened his phone, scrolled through his messages. Nothing. Not even a good night. The confrontation. She didn't wait. He went straight to the hospital. Straight to his floor. The nurse at the desk said he was out of surgery, alone in recovery. Emily didn't knock. She walked in unannounced. Thomas looked up, startled, unshaven, exhausted, still in scrubs. Emily? Do you enjoy making women feel like they're temporary? She asked, voice shaking. What are you talking about? He threw the photo on the table. He stared at it. He said I mattered, that you trusted me. I do, he said, calmly. Then why were you with her last night? He didn't flinch. Because she funded the pediatric wing, and she threatened to pull her donation if I didn't show. So you chose money. I chose my patients, he snapped, not that you'd understand what sacrifice looks like. The words cut, too deep. She turned. I do, she whispered, more than you ever will. And she walked out. This time, he didn't follow. Section 5, Partnership and First Major Trial. Broken silence, unspoken need. 3 days passed. No calls. No texts. Just silence. Emily buried herself in work. Sketches, deadlines, revisions. But her thoughts kept drifting back to Tomas, his eyes dark with exhaustion, his voice sharpened by pride and pain. He'd left that night because she didn't want to feel like she was one of his mistakes. But now she wasn't sure if walking away had been strength, until the call shattered everything. The explosion. Boom. The blatty rocked the west wing of St. Luke's Hospital at 10:42 a.m. Emily was in a conference room across the street when it happened, floor-to-ceiling glass windows shattering as the impact wave rippled through Midtown. People screamed, sirens blocked. Her coffee hit the floor. Her body froze. And then she moved. Fast. Through the smoke. Through the screaming. To the only name she could think of. Itasuit. In the fire. The emergency entrance was chaos. Patients were being dragged out on stretchers. Nurses sobbed through blood-stained masks. Families pressed against police tape. Emily spotted the chief of surgery, yelling orders. Where's Dr. Winsade? She demanded. He looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Inside, refused to evacuate. Her heart dropped. He's still in there? He's trying to stabilize a child before the roof gives in. Emily didn't wait. He sprinted past the barricades. Security yelled, but she didn't care. He pushed through the smoke-filled holes, coughing, eyes stinging, until she found him. He bent over a child on a gurney, blood on his shirt, one sleeve torn, his arm trembling. We don't have time, the nurse cried. I said hold it steady, he barked, her lungs collapsing. Emily rushed forward. Tell me what to do, she said. He glanced up, eyes wide. And for the first time in 3 days, he breathed. Hands covered in blood. For 40 minutes they worked together. Emily holding instruments, applying pressure, stabilizing, listening. Her hands were shaking, but her voice stayed calm. You're losing blood, she said quietly, pointing to the wound on his shoulder. So is she, he replied. When the final stitch was in and the girl began to breathe again, the entire room exhaled. Thomas slumped against the wall and looked at Emily. You shouldn't have come, he said, breathless. And you should... He laughed, weakly. He ripped the sleeve from her jacket and pressed it to his shoulder. "I thought I hated you," she whispered, "until I saw the fire. And I realized I'd never forgive myself if I lost you." He closed his eyes and leaned his forehead against hers. Youth between smoke. They sat on the back steps of the hospital while the fire trucks cleared debris. His shirt was ruined. Her hand was still stained red. "You scared me," she said softly. "I scare everyone. But me." He looked at her. "You were right," he murmured, "that night on the rooftop. I do keep people at arm's length because when I let someone in, they die." "Then let me in," she whispered, "and I promise I'll live." He didn't put "I'm sorry." But he didn't let go either. The partnership begins. 2 days later, the board called an emergency meeting. Due to the hospital's damaged infrastructure and pending lawsuits, the foundation faced collapse. "We're days from bankruptcy," the CFO admitted. Yamas stood at the head of the table, battered but resolute. "We can't afford to stall. We need a redesign plan, Donka trust rebuilt, and public visibility." All eyes turned to him, and then to the woman standing beside him. "Ms. Taylor?" one board member asked. She stepped forward, voice steady. "You've drafted a plan for a modular expansion. Rapid rebuild, cost-efficient, media way at the end, emotionally driven." "And who's funding it?" another barked. "We are," Thomas said, "together." But no one argued. Because in that moment, it was clear. He trusted her. And for once she believed she'd earned it. The gloved threat. That night, Emily unlocked her apartment door. There was an envelope slipped under it. Inside, a photo of her and Thomas leaving the hospital together. And a note. "Be careful where you build trust. Everything you're touching belongs to someone else." Her breath caught. And for the first time in weeks, he was afraid. Not just for herself, but for him. Section 6. First twist. A past secret emerges. An envelope she never saw coming. It arrived by courier. No return address. No message. Just a thin black envelope on Emily's desk at Adams Construction. Placed there after hours, as if someone had walked right past security and wanted her to know it. Inside were 30. A hospital birth record. A 15-year-old photograph of a young girl in a hospital gown, beside a woman with dark hair. A single name scrawled on the back in red ink. Winson. Emily stared at it for a long time. Her hands trembled. The girl in the photo? It was her. The woman beside her? Her mother. But she had no memory of the man who signed the discharge papers. Thomas's name. The journal. That night, Emily climbed into the attic of her late father's apartment, the one place untouched by recent chaos. He opened a cedar box labeled medical. Inside were dozens of appointment slips, insurance statements, and one leather-bound journal, her mother's handwriting, tight and frantic. He flipped through, and then she struck. They denied the treatment again, said the cardiac risk was too high, but Dr. Winston believes otherwise. He wants to try the experimental approach. Said he'd sign it himself. Off the books. I don't trust him, but we have no one else. Emily's stomach dropped. He'd tried it her before. He'd made a decision that saved her life. He never told her. The consequence. She didn't wait for morning. He stormed into the hospital at midnight, past the nurses who... She found him in the research wing, sleeves rolled up, coat stained with ink and exhaustion. "Tell me the truth," she said, slamming the journal on his desk. Yamich looked up slickly, saw the envelope in her hand. "And didn't friend? You knew?" she asked. "You operated on me when I was 9 years old." He nodded once, yes. "He sent you to make..." He set down his pen. "Because it wasn't about me. It was about you surviving. You were part of my life before I even knew who you were." "You were a child," he said. "You needed a miracle. I gave you one. That's all." "No," she whispered, "you gave me a lie." The unravel. He walked toward her. He signed off on an experimental procedure your mother begged for. You were dying, she had no insurance. No options. You did it in thick. Yeah. And you never told me. Because it wasn't supposed to matter, he said, until you walked into that nightclub, and I saw your face. His voice cracked. And I knew I'd seen those eyes before. Emily backed away. You pitied me. That's why you helped me. No, he said. I helped you because I failed someone else once. A little girl who looked like she was ready to die. And I couldn't forget her. But I'm not a child anymore. No, he said. You're a woman. He didn't finish. And maybe that was the worst part. The knife in the back. The next morning, Emily didn't go to work. He went to a lawyer. He handed him the envelope, the journal, the files. If he performed an unauthorized surgery on a child, she said, what are the legal consequences? The lawyer blinked. Do you want to press charges? He hesitated. No, she said, but someone else might. That night she returned home. Her phone was blowing up. Text. Email. News alerts. Thomas Winston under ethics investigation for unauthorized patriot surgery. He dropped the phone and began to cry. The betrayal. It wasn't her. She didn't leak anything. But someone used her. Used his surgery. Her envelope. Her phone. And now the man who saved her. And she didn't know how to stop it. His silence is louder than words. He showed up at his apartment the next night. He opened the door. He said nothing. He stared at her. It wasn't me, she whispered. I swear, I didn't leak anything. But you asked, he said. Because I was scared and angry. And now I'm being crucified, he said softly. Not by strangers, but by the one person I thought might finally believe in me. Go. Go, he repeated. And the door closed. Between them, like a scalpel across the chest. Section 7. Major conflict and temporary separation. The headlines wouldn't stop. The renowned surgeon accused of illegal operation on minor. Patient remains unknown. St. Louis faces ethics board review. Dr. Winscott named in whistleblower complaint. The hero or criminal, the city demands answers. Emily couldn't leave her apartment. Every time she stepped outside, someone would. And the worst part, she still didn't know who had leaked the files. But the world didn't wait for truth. It devoured the first story it could sink its teeth into. The boardroom waited. Thomas stood at the head of a long mahogany table in the hospital's executive wing. Around him sat the members of the Medical Ethics Committee, their faces pale with corporate panic. The chairman cleared his throat. We're asking you to take a leave of absence, Dr. Winston. I'm innocent, Thomas said. That may be true, another board member replied, but right now, you're a liability. He clenched his fists. I saved that child, and she's alive because of me. And yet, someone whispered, her name is still redacted in the official file. Why? No answer. Just silence. And the sound of a gavel that good old George. His office was cleared out that night. His parking badge revoked. His staff reassigned. In a single breath he went from chief of surgery to suspect. And all he could think about was her. Distance measured in regret. Emily didn't hear from him. Not a word. But she felt it. The void where his presence used to be. She paced her tiny apartment, replaying every conversation, every moment. Had she asked the wrong question, trusted the wrong person, left a trail she hadn't noticed? She didn't know. Now, it was too late. Until one night her door buzzed. She opened it and froze. Katrina Sawyer stood in the hallway, elegant, cold, and smiling. Mind if I come in? Emily didn't offer her. He just folded her arms. Are you here? Because you've caused enough damage already, Katrina said, walking in uninvited. I didn't leak the file. But you asked about it, touched it. And someone was watching. Emily narrowed her eyes. You? Katrina gave a soft laugh. Please, I'd never be so careless. So why are you really here? Katrina looked at her and I. Because Tomas is going to lose everything. His career, his license. And when he does, I want to be standing beside him. The words hit like a slap. He doesn't love you. He did. And he could again till he forgets what your face did to his life. Katrina walked to the door. He paused. You're not the first girl he's tried to save, Emily, but you might be the one who finally ruins him. And she was gone. The goodbye that wasn't spoken. Emily packed a suitcase. It would be because she had somewhere to go. But because she couldn't breathe in that city anymore. Not when every street corner reminded her of him. The rooftop. The garden. The night he told her she mattered. He left a note on his apartment door. You said you saw me once before, years ago. I think I finally see you too. I never meant to hurt you. I'm sorry I couldn't fix it. Maybe in another life, we'd both be less broken. If she didn't sign it, he just walked away and boarded a train out of Manhattan. No destination, just distance. It was world without her. He found the note the next morning. He read it in silence, then folded it neatly. He placed it in the drawer beside the ring box he'd been hiding for weeks. Yes, a ring. He'd bought it 2 days before the story leaked. He never got the chance to give it to her. Annoyed, he wasn't sure he ever would. He stood at the window, looking out over a city that used to bow when he spoke. But doubt yet, he wasn't sure which silence hurt more. The city or hers. Section 8 Reunion on Fekunda Rescue. 6 weeks of silence. Winter came early. Emily had been gone from New York for 43 days. She counted every one. He worked part-time at a coffee shop in upstate Albany, renting a single room above a bookstore run by a retired couple who never asked questions. It was quiet, clean, safe. It was killing her. Every night she replayed his voice in her head. The exorbitant goal he whispered. Every day he never said. Until one afternoon while mopping the cafe floor, the doorbell rang. And she looked up to see Derek Quincy, Thomas's younger brother. The visitor. Derek, she asked, stunned. Hi, he said gently. I hope this isn't weird. It's absolutely weird. Good, he smiled. Then I'm not imagining it. They sat in the corner booth. He doesn't know I'm here, Garrick secured. How much? He nodded. He's not doing well, Derek said softly. He hasn't operated since the hearing. Katrina's pressuring the board to strip his license. Emily felt her throat tighten. He hasn't touched a scalpel in 2 months. Because of me. Because he lost you, Garrick corrected, and when he lost you, he lost himself. He slid a USB flash drive across the table. The leak didn't come from you, Emily. It came from inside the hospital. Oh, it was quite close to Katrina Sawyer. He hesitated. If you want to help him, you'll take this to the press before the final board vote tomorrow. Emily stared at it. Small, cold, heavy, like hope. Back in the fire, Emily returned to Manhattan at dawn. No fanfare, no suitcase. Just a backpack and a promise to make things right. He met with a trusted investigative journalist from the Tribune, the same one who'd covered the original ethics leak. He handed him the US. Verify it first, she said. But when you're ready, why are you doing this now? He hesitated. Because the man you destroyed once saved my life. Remember? No, she whispered. The hallway outside the hearing room. The boardroom at St. Luke's was lined with tension. Security and lawyers, meeting him standing alone in a charcoal suit that no longer looked like armor. Katrina stood across from him, cool as ice, her attorney whispering in her ear. Emily arrived moments before the session began. The air changed. Thomas turned. Emily, he breathed. You didn't think I'd really let you go down for something you didn't do. Katrina stepped forward. You're not on the list. And the reason he's on trial, Emily said, I think I've earned the right to watch him walk free. The truth that burns. The journalist arrived halfway through the session, carrying documents, footage, and voice recordings from the USB. In less than 15 minutes, the entire narrative shattered. The leak had come from Katrina's assistant, on her orders, designed to remove Thomas from the board and regain control of the Winston surgical wing. By the time the evidence was read, Katrina had already left the room. Thomas sat perfectly still. Then his eyes drifted to Emily. They didn't smile loud, but they softened. The hospital room that changed everything again. That night, Emily found him on the pediatric floor, sitting beside a little girl recovering from heart surgery. The girl was drawing hearts on a dry erase board. She reminds me of you, Thomas said, his voice quiet. Don't know. He looked at her. Brah. He sat beside him. They didn't speak for a long time. What did you come back? He asked. Because I couldn't breathe without you. He looked at her. Really looked. You were never a mistake, he said. Neither were you, she whispered. He took her hand. He careful. As if holding something fragile. No more goodbyes. They stood outside the hospital at midnight. The air was cold. The city was quiet. You're still under review, she said. Okay. They might strip your license. I already lost what mattered most. I'm not going to lose you again. And don't. And for the first time, not because of a crisis, not because of a rescue, but because of love. He kissed her, not like a savior, not like a soldier, but like a man who had finally come home. Section 9, Truth and Renewed Commitment. No more running. The days that followed felt like borrowed time. The hospital board formally cleared Thomas Winston of all ethical violations. Katrina resigned from the St. Luke's Foundation under public scrutiny, and her assistant disappeared behind a wall of lawyers. But none of that mattered to Emily, because Thomas still hadn't said the words. Not I want you to stay. Not notice begin. He showed up. Every morning. With coffee in hand and that unreadable expression she used to fear. It made her ache. I want you to speak, she said finally, not fix, not protect, just speak. He set the coffee down. Go ask me anything, he said. Why didn't you tell me I was the girl you operated on all those years ago? Because I didn't want you to own me, he said. I wanted you to choose me. A letter from the past. That night, Emily returned to her old apartment. She hadn't been back in weeks. The landlord had kept a stack of mail for her, and in it, one envelope stood out. Faded. Stamped in 2007. Postmark Seattle. It was from her mother. Inside was a single letter, never opened, addressed to Matsutsuka. She sat down, heart pounding. Ready. If anything happens to me, tell her the truth. She was born fighting. Don't let her grow up thinking she was a burden. She was my reason. You gave her back to me. You changed everything. I never got to thank you properly. But if she ever finds you, please, remind her how hard we both fought to keep her alive. Emily's hands trembled. He'd spent years thinking her mother had failed her. But in truth, her mother had chosen hope, and Thomas had been the one to catch it. The conversation that set them free. He found him in the hospital atrium, standing alone, watching children walk by with balloons. You saved me twice, she said. He turned. I'm done letting you carry the guilt of it. She handed him the letter. He read it. When he finished, his eyes shone with something she'd never seen in him before. Relief. She was braver than they ever gave her credit for. So was I. You still are. He took her hand. And I need to say this before I lose my nerve. She waited. I don't want to save you anymore, Emily. I want to live beside you. Even if it means failure. Especially then, he said, because with you, I finally feel human again. She leaned her forehead against his. Then promise me something. And he thought, next time you try to walk away, He smiled. The Project Reborn. With his name cleared, Thomas returned to the hospital, but not to surgery. He chose instead to co-lead the Rebuild Initiative, the same architectural project Emily was now heading at Adams Construction. Together they unveiled blueprints for a new pediatric wing, a trauma recovery center, and a sanctuary garden for patients and their families. Investors wept during the presentation. The children clapped. But Thomas only looked at her and smiled, because this two vows made in private. That night, back on the rooftop where it all began, Emily stood wrapped in his coat, the city below shimmering with light. I used to believe love was weakness, she said, something soft, something foolish. It is, he replied. Then why do we choose it? He looked, and I study. Because it's the only thing that makes the pain worth it. She nodded. He returned to her coat pocket and pulled out a tiny velvet box. What's that? He asked. I vow, she said, opening it. Inside was a silver band, simple, unadorned, etched with one word. Hey, it's not a proposal, she whispered. It's a promise. Yarmouth didn't say anything. He'd just pulled her into his arms. And for the first time, they weren't broken people trying to rescue each other. They were partners, standing in the wreckage, and choosing to build something stronger. You can look at Section 10, Fiancé Final Climax, and Healing Resolution. The phone call that shattered the quiet. 3 months into the hospital rebuild, just when peace had become routine, Emily's phone rang. This is Emily. A voice responded. Cool, Kukuchik. We thought you'd like to know. A lawsuit has been filed against Dr. Winston. Again, this time for the death of a patient from 10 years ago. The press has it already. Emily's heart stopped. Who's wrong? The deceased's brother, represented by Katrina Sawyer's legal team. Of course, the same woman who tried to ruin Thomas's career was back, with a new weapon. Only this time they weren't after his license. They were after him. Thomas's crossroads. Yamaz sat in his apartment, staring at the legal notice. He looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from the war he'd fought alone for years. They won't stop until they bury me, he told Emily quietly. Then let me fight beside you. You've done enough, he said gently. You gave me a reason to keep breathing. You think I came this far to watch you walk back into the fire alone? He looked at her, truly looked, and she could see it. He was about to give up. Let them take everything, he said, as long as they don't take you. Don't say that. I mean, tears welled in her eyes. Then I'll do it. I'll go public. What? I'll testify, tell the world what you did for me, for that little girl, for all of them. He grabbed her hand. It could destroy your career, and you saved my life. The interview that changed everything. Dr. Thomas Winston saved my life when I was 9 years old, without payment or recognition. He saved me again in a nightclub when no one else would even look at me. And if you're asking me whether I believe he belongs in a courtroom, she looked into the camera. No, he belongs in an operating room saving the next girl no one sees. The segment aired nationwide. It went viral. And within 48 hours, 50 former patients came forward. Stories poured in. Thomas Winston hadn't failed people, he'd saved them, when no one else would. Redemption comes quiet. The lawsuit was dropped. Silently, without apology, without fanfare. But Thomas knew what it meant. The world was finally quiet, and in the quiet he turned to Emily. The garden ceremony. They didn't want a wedding in a cathedral or a ballroom. They chose the rooftop garden of St. Luke's, the one they rebuilt together. There were only 20 guests. No pre. Will go down that cost more than a month's rent. Just sunlight, white roses, and a promise made between two people who knew what it meant to lose everything and still choose love. As Emily walked down the simple white runner, her eyes never left his. He didn't cry, but his voice cracked as he said her name. I never thought I'd believe in second chances, or myself, until you. She smiled, tears glistening. Thomas Elijah Winstead, I thought I was ruined, until you loved me anyway. They didn't exchange traditional rings. In Skippy, each wore a thin silver band with a single word etched inside. Hers. His one could. The Winston Taylor Children's Recovery Center opened its doors that fall. Emily was lead designer and head of patient family experience. Thomas returned to surgery quietly, privately, and on his terms. They worked side by side, most days never saying much, but always knowing what the other needed. And at night, they went home to the apartment with the windows that faced the city. A home they built not with money, but with trust. And once, just once, Emily whispered into his chest, "Houston, think I needed saving?" He smiled, kissing her hair. And I thought we ought to do. Epilogue, the life they chose to stay in. Some stories don't end with fireworks or grand finales. Some simply exhale, softly, like the moment after a storm, when the world is still and you realize you're still standing. Emily Taylor never imagined she'd marry a man like Thomas Winston, not because he was powerful or rich or a surgeon known across Manhattan, but because once upon a time she didn't believe men like him saw women like her. She was just a girl clawing her way out of survival, a girl who'd once taken a job offer from a man in a nightclub, thinking it was the only option left. But Thomas didn't see her as a problem to fix. He didn't give her pity. He gave her time and choice, and in the end that was all she needed to remember who she really was. Their wedding had been small, not out of modesty but by design. They'd both spent too much of their lives in the public eye, on the edge of other people's expectations. This time they chose something sacred, something quiet, a garden, the wind, the laughter of children in the distance. No press, no pretense, just hands held tight, and promises made between two people who had already survived their vows long before they ever spoke them. After the ceremony they went home together. No limousine, no honeymoon in Paris. Just the apartment on 86th Street, the one with the wide windows and the warm kitchen, and the rooftop where he'd first let her in. They kept it simple, no gold fixtures or marble staircases. Emily designed the shelves herself. He planted the rosemary by the window, and every Sunday they cooked together, burning the toast more often than not, but laughing anyway. Love, they learned, was not fireworks or sweeping gestures. It was the small things. The coat draped over her shoulders when she forgot it. The post-it note he left in her lunch that read, "You're more than I deserved. I'm glad I get to try anyway." It was walking into the same room after an argument, even when pride begged you not to. It was choosing again and again not to run. Thomas never stopped working, but he changed the way he practiced. He no longer chased accolades. He trained younger surgeons, mentored interns, and operated when no one else would. He didn't do it for the papers or the awards anymore. He did it for the kids who didn't have anyone, for the girls who reminded him of Emily, afraid, invisible, brilliant. Emily became more than a designer. She became a voice in the hospital, advocating for patient dignity, creating spaces where healing felt like home. When the Winston Taylor Recovery Center opened, she stood beside the mayor and smiled for the cameras. But it was the child who ran up to hug her afterward that made her cry. They never had a child of their own. Not because they didn't want one, but because some wounds, the kind the body carries long after trauma, take things from you. Still, they grieved, together. And then, without speaking it aloud, they found other ways to be parents. They sponsored 5 children in the city's foster care program, hosted 2 teenage girls through their first internships in design. One Christmas, they found a boy on the hospital steps, a runaway. He stayed with them for 8 months. When he left, he called her mom and left Thomas a letter that simply said, "You're the first man I ever wanted to grow up like." Their marriage was not perfect. There were hard seasons, weeks where Emily shut down, days when Thomas forgot how to rest. But they learned each other's silences, and when the pain came back, his guilt, her shame, they didn't fight it alone. Thomas once told her, "Love is what you choose to stay in when leaving would be easier." And she stayed. So did he. Years passed. Their hair grew grayer. Her laugh got louder. He smiled more. The hospital grew. Their story became legend. But if you asked Emily about it, really asked, she wouldn't talk about the headlines or the lawsuit or the girl who exposed corruption. She'd tell you about the day she collapsed in a hospital hallway, burning up from stress and shame, and woke up in a stranger's guest room with a note on the nightstand that said, "No more nights like last night." He'd tell you that was the first time she remembered feeling safe. And if you asked Thomas, he wouldn't tell you about the surgical victories or the reinstatement hearing. He'd tell you about the day a waitress stood in his office doorway, shoulders tense, hair falling out of her bun, and threw a patient file onto his desk with the fire of someone who'd just learned the truth. "You saved me once. I never even knew it." He'd tell you that was the day he forgave himself. But when they were older, they returned to that nightclub. Just once. It had changed, new lights, new name, new crowd. But when they walked in, hand in hand, no one knew them. And that was the beauty of it. He stood on the same floor where she'd once been cornered, afraid, alone. And this time she turned to him grinning. "Remember what you said when we met?" He raised a brow. "That your body was mine for the hour?" She laughed. "No." He smiled. He said, "I wasn't looking for a lover, I needed a wife." He nodded, tears behind her eyes. "And you got one." He kissed her hand. "No," he said softly. "I got everything." Some people believe love begins with a spark, a glance across the room, a perfect kiss, the moment when everything aligns. But Emily Taylor and Thomas Winston would tell you something else. Love doesn't start in perfection. It begins in the wreckage. Their love didn't unfold beneath fairy lights or over candlelit dinners. It began in a nightclub thick with danger and desperation. It started with a girl who thought her body was all she had left to sell, and a man who believed he'd long buried the part of himself capable of saving anyone. But the truth is, they saved each other. He didn't give her a palace. He gave her a key, a door to walk through if she wanted to. No locks, no debt. Just one man's quiet, steady choice to believe she was worth more than her worst moment. And she didn't worship him. She challenged him. She looked him in the eye the way no one else had in years and said, "You don't scare me, but your silence does." They taught each other that love isn't about rescuing. It's about standing beside someone while they rescue themselves. It's being there after the ambulance leaves when the real pain shows up. It's holding a hand not just to steady it, but to anchor it when the waves come again. Because they always do. Thomas had lived most of his life believing guilt was his cross to bear, that redemption came only through punishment. He'd buried his grief in operating rooms and stitched his trauma into surgical precision. But then she came in, messy, stubborn, unpredictable, and reminded him that healing isn't a solo surgery. Sometimes the hardest procedure is learning to let someone see your scar and stay. Emily had lived most of her life with the door half open, one foot always ready to run. Survival made her smart, made her resourceful, but it also made her lonely. She didn't know how to trust people who offered help, because help always had strings. But Thomas didn't offer strings. He offered space, and that, she realized, was the most loving thing he could have done. So what did they learn? They learned that being broken isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of your humanity. That trauma doesn't make you unlovable. It just makes love harder to recognize when it finally arrives. They learned that people carry shame in silence, and that sometimes the most important thing you can say to someone isn't "I love you," but "I still see you." They learned that not all wounds bleed. Some fester quietly in the heart. That grief doesn't ask for permission. It lives inside your laughter, your morning coffee, your sudden tears in grocery store aisles, and the only way through it is with someone who knows how to sit with you in the dark without rushing to turn on the light. Emily and Thomas didn't become perfect. They didn't stop arguing. They didn't suddenly understand each other in full sentences, but they learned how to stay, how to pause in the middle of a fight and say, "I'm afraid and I don't know how to say that out loud," how to sit beside each other when words failed and just. They taught each other that survival is not the same as living, that there is a difference between being strong and being numb, and that it's okay to need people even when the world has taught you not to. For Thomas, love meant learning how to rest, not just physically, but emotionally. It meant no longer needing to be the hero in every story. It meant finally accepting that saving one life doesn't require sacrificing your own every time, that he was allowed joy, that he could choose family over legacy. For Emily, love meant facing the mirror and no longer seeing a transaction, a trauma case, or a girl who almost gave herself away for $50,000, 0 cents. It meant looking at herself through his eyes and finally believing what he always knew, that she was enough, because she survived, but because she never stopped trying. In the end, their love wasn't loud. It wasn't glittering or glamorous. It didn't come with fanfare or viral photos. It was real, messy, hard-fought, and worth every second. Because love, at its core, isn't about what you say. It's about what you're still willing to do on the worst day, not just the best one. It's not the flowers you send, it's showing up, after the fallout, after the silence, after the storm, and choosing again. You stay. So, if you're someone who's ever felt too broken, too tired, too ashamed to believe in love again, this story is for you. If you've lost your voice, your way, or your worth, this story is your reminder. You are not too far gone. You are not too late. You are not unlovable because you've suffered. You are still capable of giving and receiving love. That doesn't hurt. And sometimes it will find you in the last place you expect. A hospital hallway, a rooftop in the rain, a stranger's eyes in the middle of your worst mistake. Because love isn't just something you fall into. It's something you fight for. So take the risk. Tell the truth. Ask for help. Forgive. Begin again. Because everyone deserves a second chance at love, at healing, and at life. Ashley.